A 6-year-old boy vanished from an Oakland park while playing with his brother, leaving his mother to search for him every single day for 54 years until her death. But 7 decades later, his niece makes a discovery that changes everything and reveals the incredible truth about what happened to Luis Armando Albino. There are mysteries that refuse to let go. Cases that grip families so tightly that decades pass, generations change, and still the questions remain. Tonight, we explore the haunting reality of families who have spent lifetimes searching for answers, clinging to hope when logic suggests they should let go. In 1951, Jefferson Square Park in West Oakland, California, was a place where children played safely while their parents watched from nearby. On February 7th of that year, 6-year-old Luis Armando Albino was doing exactly what thousands of other children did every day, playing with his older brother Roger in the afternoon sun. Luis had been born in Puerto Rico and brought to the United States by his parents just months earlier, along with his 5 siblings. The family had settled into their new life in Oakland, and Luis was beginning to learn English while maintaining his native Spanish. He was a bright, curious child with dark hair and eyes that sparkled with mischief. On that February afternoon, Roger, who was 10 years old, was keeping an eye on his younger brother as they played near the park's central area. The boys were speaking in Spanish, laughing as they chased each other around the code playground equipment. Their mother, Antonia Albino, had given them permission to play for a few hours before returning home for dinner. What happened next would haunt the Albino family for more than 7 decades. A woman approached the boys, speaking to them in Spanish. She wore a bandana wrapped around her head and seemed friendly enough. She told Luis she would take him to a store to buy candy, something that would appeal to any 6-year-old child. Roger watched as his little brother walked away with the stranger, assuming they would return shortly. But Luis never came back to the park, and Roger never saw his brother again. When the woman and Luis failed to return after an hour, Roger became worried. He searched the park, calling his brother's name in both Spanish and English. Other children and their parents joined the search, combing through every corner of Jefferson Square Park. By evening, panic had set in. The Oakland Police Department launched an immediate investigation. This was not a typical missing child case where a boy might have wandered off and gotten lost. Multiple witnesses had seen Luis leave with an adult woman, making this a clear case of abduction. The search effort was massive by 1951 standards. Police officers canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors and questioning anyone who might have seen the woman and child. The Oakland Army base deployed soldiers to assist in the search. The Coast Guard joined the effort, searching the waters of San Francisco Bay in case the worst had happened. The Federal Bureau of Investigation opened a file on the case, treating it as a potential kidnapping across state lines. For weeks, the search continued. Bloodhounds were brought in to track any scent from the park. Helicopters flew overhead, scanning the surrounding areas. Every lead was followed, every tip investigated. But Luis Armando Albino had vanished without a trace. Antonia Albino, Luis's mother, refused to accept that her son was gone forever. Every morning, she would visit the Oakland Police Department's Missing Persons Bureau, asking if there had been any developments in her son's case. She carried a wallet-sized photograph of Luis everywhere she went, showing it to strangers on the street, hoping someone might recognize him. The original newspaper article about Luis's disappearance became her most treasured possession. She folded it carefully and kept it in her wallet, reading it over and over again, memorizing every detail. The photograph of her young son, printed in black and white, became faded from handling, but she never stopped carrying it. Roger, now the oldest child in the family, carried the weight of being the last person to see his brother alive. He was questioned repeatedly by police, asked to describe the woman who took Luis. Each time he told the same story. A woman with a bandana who spoke Spanish and promised to buy his brother candy. As months turned into years, the daily visits to the police station became weekly, then monthly, then annual pilgrimages. But Antonia never gave up hope. She would tell her other children, her grandchildren, and anyone who would listen about Luis. She kept his photograph displayed prominently in their home, speaking of him as if he might walk through the door at any moment. The family dynamics changed forever. Luis's siblings grew up knowing they had a brother who had vanished, creating a permanent void in their lives. Family gatherings were marked by his absence. Birthdays and holidays carried the weight of wondering where Luis was and what had happened to him. Decades passed, and the case grew cold. The detectives who originally worked the investigation retired or passed away. The files were transferred to different departments, occasionally reviewed but never solved. The Oakland Police Department received tips over the years, but none led to Luis or provided any concrete information about his fate. Antonia Albino aged from a young mother into a grandmother, then a great-grandmother. She watched her other children build families of their own, but she never stopped talking about Luis. She would tell her grandchildren about their missing uncle, sharing stories of the bright 6-year-old who loved to play and laugh. In 2005, 54 years after Luis's disappearance, Antonia Albino passed away at the age of 92. She died without ever knowing what happened to her son, taking with her the hope that had sustained her for more than half a century. Her family gathered to mourn not just the loss of their matriarch, but the final closing of a chapter in their search for Luis. But the story was far from over. The concept of never giving up becomes more than just words when you witness families who have spent decades searching for missing loved ones. The Albino family's experience represents thousands of similar cases across America, where families refuse to accept that their loved ones are gone forever. After Antonia's death, her children and grandchildren continued to honor her memory by keeping Luis's story alive. They would share photographs from before his disappearance, tell stories about his personality, and maintain hope that someday they would learn what happened to him. The family narrative included Luis as a permanent member, even though he had been missing for longer than he had been present in their lives. This dedication to missing family members is not unique to the Albino family. Across the country, similar stories play out in homes where photographs of missing loved ones maintain prominent places on mantels and walls. These families understand something that others cannot: the human capacity to hold on to hope even when logic suggests it is futile. In Mount Juliet, Tennessee, Larry and Ramona Walker know this reality intimately. Their daughter, Devin Nicole Walker, has been missing since February 26, 2020. The parallels between their experience and the Albino family's journey are striking, even though the circumstances are different. Devin was 34 years old when she vanished. Not a child like Luis had been. She was a former basketball star at Antioch High School, where she graduated in 2004 before playing college basketball at Motlow State. She was a devoted mother to her daughter, Kennedy Coker, who was studying at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville when her mother disappeared. On the day she went missing, Devin told her parents she was going to walk to the store. It was the day after her birthday, and she was making a trip she had made countless times before. The Walker family lived in the Willoughby Station neighborhood, and Devin was familiar with the area. She left the house around midday, expecting to return within an hour. But Devlin never came home from that walk. Larry Walker, a veteran photojournalist with 38 years of experience at television stations WSMV and WKRN, had covered hundreds of stories about missing persons and grieving families. He had interviewed parents who had lost children, spouses who had lost partners, and children who had lost parents, but nothing in his professional experience prepared him for the reality of being on the other side of that story. The Walker family's search for Devlin began immediately. They contacted local law enforcement, organized search parties, and distributed flyers throughout the community. Larry's connections in the media helped generate coverage of Devlin's disappearance, but as weeks turned into months, the media attention faded while the family's anguish continued. The statistics surrounding missing persons cases are staggering. According to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, between 400 and 600 children go missing every month in Tennessee alone. The Metro Nashville Police Department reported an increase in missing persons cases from 1,709 in 2023 to 1,874 in 2024. These numbers represent individual tragedies, families torn apart by uncertainty, and communities forever changed by unexplained disappearances. Behind each statistic is a family like the Walkers, dealing with the daily reality of not knowing whether their loved one is alive or dead, safe or in danger. The demographics of missing persons cases reveal disturbing patterns. In Davidson County, Tennessee, juveniles under 17 make up 64% of all missing persons cases. The 1,214 children who went missing in 2024 represent families experiencing the worst fear any parent can imagine. Black girls under 17 represent the largest demographic among missing persons, with 374 cases reported in 2024. Black boys under 17 make up the second largest group, with 335 cases. These numbers highlight the disproportionate impact of missing persons cases on minority communities. The investigation process for missing persons cases follows a tiered system, according to Tennessee Bureau of Investigation spokesperson Josh Devine. Most cases are resolved quickly at the local level, often involving runaways who return home within days. However, the cases that remain unsolved become increasingly complex as time passes. For families like the Walkers, the investigative process becomes a marathon rather than a sprint. They maintain contact with law enforcement, follow up on tips, and continue searching long after media attention has moved on to other stories. The emotional toll is immeasurable, affecting not just the immediate family, but extended relatives, friends, and entire communities. Devon Walker's case involves additional complexities that make it particularly challenging. The family is open about Devon's struggle with opioid addiction, which developed after dental work that did not heal properly. However, they believe she had been drug-free for approximately 6 months before her disappearance, making her sudden vanishing even more mysterious. The timing of Devon's disappearance also created confusion in the early stages of the investigation. She was not officially reported missing until April 16, 2020, although her family had contacted police in early March. It was not unusual for Devon to leave for periods of time, so the family initially hoped she would return on her own. This delay in reporting highlights one of the challenges law enforcement faces in missing persons cases. Family members may wait to report someone missing if that person has a history of leaving temporarily. This waiting period can be crucial in investigations, as the first hours and days after a disappearance are often the most important for gathering evidence and witnesses. The Walker family's experience illustrates the long-term impact of having a missing family member. Holidays become painful reminders of absence. Mother's Day is particularly difficult for Ramona Walker, who struggles with the combination of celebrating her role as a mother while mourning the absence of her daughter. Family gatherings include conversations about Devon, keeping her memory alive while hoping for her return. Her daughter Kennedy has had to continue her education while dealing with the trauma of her mother's disappearance. Her nephew Montrell, who used to play video games with Devon, has gone on to play college football at Howard University in Washington, District of Columbia, carrying the weight of his aunt's absence. The community response to Devlin's disappearance has been significant. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers have participated in search efforts, distributed flyers, and provided emotional support to the Walker family. Larry Walker notes that people at church and in the neighborhood continue to ask about Devlin, showing that her disappearance has affected the entire community. The Mount Juliet Police Department assigned a new detective to Devon's case in 2024 due to a promotion within the department. Deputy Chief Tyler Chandler acknowledges that while there are no new updates, the case remains active and under investigation. For families dealing with missing loved ones, the concept of closure becomes complicated. Unlike families who experience the death of a loved one, families of missing persons cannot grieve in traditional ways. They exist in a state of perpetual uncertainty, unable to move forward but also unable to go back. The Walker family's daily routine includes the constant awareness that Devon might return at any moment. They maintain her room, keep her belongings, and continue to hope for her safe return. This hope sustains them, but also creates an emotional burden that affects every aspect of their lives. Similar cases across the country demonstrate that the Walker family's experience is not unique. In Rogersville, Tennessee, the family of 5-year-old Summer Wells has been searching for their daughter since June 2021. An Amber Alert was issued after Summer disappeared from her home in northeast Tennessee, but she has never been found. The Wells case received significant media attention, with television programs and podcasts covering the story extensively. However, despite the publicity and numerous tips, Summer remains missing. Her family continues to hope for her safe return while dealing with the daily reality of not knowing where she is or what happened to her. In Unionville, Tennessee, the families of Gage Daniel and Chloe Leverett have been searching for the siblings since September 28, 2012. The children were living with their grandparents when their house burned down. The grandparents died in the fire, but the children's bodies were never found, leading to speculation that they may have survived and been taken by someone. These cases demonstrate that missing persons investigations can continue for years or even decades without resolution. Families learn to live with uncertainty while maintaining hope that their loved ones will be found alive and well. The emotional impact on families extends beyond the immediate relatives. Extended family members, friends, and community members all experience secondary trauma from prolonged missing persons cases. The uncertainty affects everyone who cared about the missing person, creating ripple effects throughout entire communities. Support systems for families of missing persons have evolved over the years. Organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children provide resources and assistance to families dealing with missing loved ones. These organizations offer emotional support, investigative assistance, and advocacy for policy changes to improve missing persons investigations. Technology has also changed the landscape of missing persons cases. Social media platforms allow families to share information about missing loved ones with vast audiences. Age progression photographs help families and the public visualize what missing persons might look like years after their disappearance. Despite these advances, the fundamental challenge remains the same. Families must find ways to live with uncertainty while maintaining hope for answers. The strength required to continue searching for missing loved ones, year after year, is remarkable, representing the deepest aspects of human love and determination. The intersection of modern technology and decades-old missing persons cases has created unprecedented opportunities for resolution. DNA testing, age progression software, and digital databases have revolutionized how law enforcement and families approach cold cases, offering new hope for answers that seemed impossible just a generation ago. For the Albino family, the breakthrough came not from law enforcement, but from a family member's curiosity about genealogy. In 2020, Alida Alaquin, Luis's 63-year-old niece, decided to take an online DNA test. Her motivation was simple curiosity about her family's genetic background, the same reason millions of people submit DNA samples to genealogy websites each year. Alida had grown up knowing about her missing uncle Luis. Her grandmother, Antonia, had shared stories about him throughout Alida's childhood, keeping his memory alive in the family's collective consciousness. The original newspaper article about Luis's disappearance had been carefully preserved, passed down through the family as a tangible connection to their missing relative. When Alida received her DNA test results, she was shocked to discover a 22% genetic match with a man living on the East Coast. The percentage was significant enough to indicate a close family relationship, but the location was puzzling. The match showed someone living thousands of miles away from California, in a region where the Albino family had no known relatives. Alida attempted to contact the genetic match through the DNA testing website's messaging system, but she received no response. The man's profile contained limited information, and without his cooperation, she could not determine his identity or relationship to her family. The mystery deepened her curiosity, but also created frustration about the lack of information. This experience reflects a common challenge in genetic genealogy. While DNA testing can reveal genetic connections between individuals, it cannot provide context about those relationships without additional information. Many people submit DNA samples without maintaining active profiles on the websites, making contact difficult or impossible. The science behind DNA matching in genealogy is complex but increasingly accessible. Commercial DNA testing companies compare genetic markers across millions of samples, identifying individuals who share segments of DNA. The percentage of shared DNA can indicate the likely relationship between two people, though it cannot definitively establish specific connections without additional evidence. A 22% DNA match typically indicates a relationship between an uncle and niece, half-siblings, or grandparent and grandchild. For Alida, who knew her family tree well, the most likely explanation was that the match represented her missing uncle Luis. However, proving this connection would require additional evidence and cooperation from the genetic match. The potential of genetic genealogy to solve cold cases has been demonstrated in thousands of cases worldwide. Law enforcement agencies have used DNA evidence to identify perpetrators of crimes committed decades ago, often through familial connections identified in genealogy databases. The same technology that helps people discover their ancestry can also solve mysteries that have puzzled investigators for generations. Age progression technology represents another significant advancement in missing persons investigations. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has developed sophisticated software that can predict how a person might look years or decades after their disappearance. These age-progressed images are based on scientific understanding of how facial features change over time, combined with knowledge of the missing person's family genetics. For long-term missing persons cases, age progression can be crucial for generating new leads. A photograph of a 6-year-old child who disappeared in 1951 would be useless for identifying a man in his late 70s. However, an age-progressed image showing how that child might look as an elderly adult could potentially lead to recognition and identification. The technology behind age progression combines computer modeling with artistic interpretation. Forensic artists study family photographs to understand genetic traits, then use software to project how those traits might appear at different ages. The process considers factors like bone structure, genetic predisposition to baldness or gray hair, and typical aging patterns. Digital databases have also transformed missing persons investigations. The National Crime Information Center maintains a database of missing persons that can be searched by law enforcement agencies nationwide. This centralized system allows investigators to cross-reference cases and identify potential connections between different jurisdictions. The Federal Bureau of Investigation's Combined DNA Index System, known as CODIS, stores DNA profiles from crime scenes and missing persons cases. When new DNA evidence is submitted, it is automatically compared against existing profiles, potentially identifying matches that could solve cases. This system has been instrumental in solving cold cases and identifying human remains. For families dealing with missing loved ones, these technological advances offer new reasons for hope. Cases that seemed hopeless decades ago may now be solvable through genetic genealogy, age progression, or database searches. However, the technology also creates new challenges and ethical considerations. Privacy concerns surrounding genetic genealogy have become increasingly important as the technology becomes more widespread. Many people who submit DNA samples to genealogy websites are unaware that their genetic information could be used to identify relatives involved in criminal cases or missing persons investigations. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has embraced technological advances in missing persons cases. The agency works with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to develop age progression photographs for long-term missing persons cases. These images are distributed to law enforcement agencies and published online, hoping to generate new leads. The success rate of age progression technology varies depending on the specific case and the quality of available photographs. Some age-progressed images have led directly to the identification of missing persons, while others have generated tips that proved helpful in investigations. The technology is not perfect, but it represents a significant improvement over having no recent image of a missing person. Social media platforms have created new opportunities for sharing information about missing persons. Facebook, Twitter, and other platforms allow families to share photographs, age-progressed images, and case information with vast audiences. The viral nature of social media can generate awareness far beyond what traditional media coverage can achieve. The Nashville Police Department created a new website in 2024 dedicated to missing persons and cold cases. The site includes photographs, case information, and age-progressed images when available. The goal is to generate new leads by making information more accessible to the public. For the Albino family, the DNA match discovered in 2020 represented the first potential breakthrough in Luis's case in nearly 70 years. However, without additional information or cooperation from the genetic match, the lead seemed to reach a dead end. A leader put the information aside, not knowing how to proceed with the investigation. The limitations of genetic genealogy become apparent when dealing with uncooperative matches or individuals who are unaware of their genetic connections. Unlike traditional genealogy, which relies on documented family trees and historical records, genetic genealogy depends on people actively participating in the process. Many cold cases remain unsolved, not because of lack of evidence, but because of the complex nature of genetic relationships and the challenges of interpreting DNA matches. Professional genetic genealogists have developed specialized skills for working with law enforcement to solve these cases, but the process can be time-consuming and requires significant expertise. The cost of genetic genealogy investigations can also be prohibitive for families dealing with missing loved ones. While commercial DNA tests are relatively inexpensive, the specialized analysis required for cold cases often requires professional genealogists who charge significant fees for their services. Despite these challenges, the success stories of genetic genealogy in solving cold cases continue to inspire hope among families dealing with missing loved ones. The technology has reunited families separated for decades, identified human remains that had been unidentified for years, and solved crimes that seemed impossible to resolve. The intersection of technology and human determination creates powerful possibilities for solving missing persons cases. While technology provides new tools and capabilities, it is often the persistence of family members that drives investigations forward and generates the breakthroughs that lead to resolution. For families like the Albinos, the Walker family, and thousands of others dealing with missing loved ones, technological advances offer new reasons for hope. The tools available today for investigating cold cases are more sophisticated and powerful than ever before. creating opportunities for answers that seemed impossible just a generation ago. The year 2024 brought renewed hope to the Albino family when Alidia Alaquin decided to revisit the DNA match she had discovered 4 years earlier. What started as a family research project with her daughters would ultimately solve one of the longest-standing missing persons cases in American history. Alida's daughters had become interested in their family's history, particularly the story of their missing great-uncle Luis. They had grown up hearing stories about the 6-year-old boy who had vanished from the Oakland park, and they wanted to learn more about what had happened to him. The family's oral tradition had kept Luis's memory alive, but the younger generation was curious about the possibility of finding new information. The daughters suggested using the internet to research Luis's case more thoroughly. They began by searching for his name online, hoping to find additional information about his disappearance or the investigation. What they discovered was a treasure trove of historical documents that had been digitized and made available through public libraries and historical societies. The Oakland Public Library had digitized many of their historical newspaper archives, including the original articles about Luis's disappearance from 1951. The family was able to access these documents through the library's online database, viewing the original newspaper coverage of the case for the first time in decades. The digitized newspapers contained details about Luis's disappearance that had been forgotten or lost over the years. The articles included descriptions of the search efforts, quotes from police officers and family members, and photographs of Luis that the family had never seen before. The digital archives provided a comprehensive record of the investigation and the community's response to the disappearance. Most importantly, the newspaper articles confirmed that Luis was likely still alive when he was taken from the park. The witness accounts described seeing him leave willingly with the woman who approached him, suggesting that he had not been harmed in the initial moments of his disappearance. This information provided hope that he had survived and potentially been raised by someone else. The family's research also revealed that Luis's case had never been officially closed. The Oakland Police Department had maintained an active file on his disappearance, though the case had been transferred between different departments and investigators over the decades. The discovery that the case remained open meant that new evidence could still be submitted and investigated. Armed with this new information and the DNA match from 2020, Alida made the decision to contact law enforcement directly. In June of 2024, she visited the Oakland Police Department with copies of the newspaper articles, the DNA test results, and a detailed family tree showing her relationship to Luis. The police officers who reviewed Alida's information were impressed by the thoroughness of her research and the potential significance of the DNA match. The 22% genetic connection was strong enough to warrant further investigation, especially given the age of the case and the lack of other leads. The Oakland Police Department contacted the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which had maintained jurisdiction over Luis's case due to the possibility of interstate transportation. The FBI's cold case unit agreed to reopen the investigation based on the new DNA evidence and the family's research. The FBI's involvement brought additional resources and expertise to the case. Federal agents have access to databases and investigative tools that are not available to local law enforcement agencies. They also have the authority to investigate across state lines, which was crucial given that the DNA match was located on the East Coast. The process of locating the DNA match required careful coordination between multiple agencies. The FBI worked with the DNA testing company to obtain additional information about the genetic match, while respecting privacy laws and the individual's rights. The investigation required legal authorization to access personal information and contact the individual. Within weeks of reopening the case, federal agents had located the man whose DNA matched with Alida's sample. He was living on the East Coast, just as the genetic genealogy results had indicated. The agents approached him carefully, explaining that he might be connected to a missing persons case from California. The man, now 79 years old, was initially confused by the agent's visit. He had been adopted as a child and raised by a family on the East Coast, but he had no knowledge of being connected to a missing persons case. His adoptive parents had passed away years earlier, and he had never questioned the circumstances of his adoption. The FBI agents explained the situation carefully, showing him the original newspaper articles about Luis's disappearance and the DNA evidence that suggested he might be the missing boy. The man was shocked by the information, but agreed to provide a new DNA sample for comparison. The process of collecting and analyzing the new DNA sample took several weeks. The FBI laboratory compared the man's genetic profile with DNA samples from Luis's surviving relatives including his sister and other family members. The results would provide definitive proof of whether the man was indeed Luis Armando Albino. During the waiting period, the man began to reflect on his childhood memories and the circumstances of his adoption. He recalled being very young when he came to live with his adoptive family, and he had vague memories of traveling from somewhere far away. His adoptive parents had always been loving and supportive, but they had been evasive when he asked questions about his early life. The man also remembered having difficulty with English when he was young, though he had no memory of speaking another language. His adoptive parents had told him that he was shy and quiet, but they had never mentioned anything about him speaking Spanish or having a different cultural background. These memories took on new significance in light of the FBI's investigation. The man began to wonder if his adoptive parents had known about his true identity and had chosen to keep it secret to protect him or themselves. The possibility that he had been kidnapped as a child was difficult to process, especially given his positive relationship with his adoptive family. The DNA results confirmed what the family had hoped and feared. The man was indeed Luis Armando Albino, the 6-year-old boy who had vanished from Jefferson Square Park in 1951. The genetic match was conclusive, providing definitive proof that the missing child had been found alive after 73 years. The FBI immediately contacted the Oakland Police Department and the Albino family with the news. For a leader, the moment represented the culmination of years of research and the fulfillment of her grandmother's lifelong hope. She had succeeded in finding the uncle who had been missing for her entire lifetime. The emotional impact of the discovery was overwhelming for the entire family. Alida's mother, Luis's sister, wept upon hearing the news. The family had maintained hope for decades, but the reality of actually finding Luis alive was almost too much to comprehend. The FBI arranged for Luis to travel to California to meet his biological family. The reunion was planned carefully, with consideration for the emotional impact on all parties involved. Luis was 79 years old and had lived his entire adult life believing he was someone else. The discovery of his true identity was a significant adjustment. For the Albino family, the reunion represented the answer to a prayer that had been offered for 73 years. They would finally meet the little boy who had vanished from their lives, now an elderly man with his own family and life experiences. The case also raised questions about the woman who had taken Luis from the park and the circumstances of his adoption. The FBI investigation continued to focus on these aspects of the case, though many of the potential witnesses and suspects had likely passed away in the intervening decades. The success of the DNA genealogy investigation demonstrated the power of combining modern technology with persistent family advocacy. Without Alida's determination to pursue the DNA match and her thorough research into the case, Luis might never have been identified. The case also highlighted the importance of maintaining accurate records and databases for missing persons cases. The fact that Luis's case had remained open and that the original newspaper articles had been preserved and digitized was crucial to the investigation's success. For law enforcement agencies, the case represented a significant success in cold case investigations. The collaboration between local, state, and federal agencies, combined with advanced DNA technology, had solved a case that had baffled investigators for more than 7 decades. The discovery of Luis Armando Albino alive after 73 years provided hope for other families dealing with missing loved ones. The case demonstrated that even the oldest cold cases could potentially be solved with new technology and persistent investigation. The reunion between Luis Armando Albino and his biological family in June of 2024 was arranged with careful consideration for the emotional impact on all parties involved. The FBI coordinated the meeting, ensuring that both Luis and his relatives had support during what would be an overwhelming experience for everyone. Luis traveled from his home on the East Coast to Oakland, California, accompanied by some of his own family members. He had built a life over the past 7 decades, serving his country and his community in ways that would have made his birth family proud. He had enlisted in the United States Marine Corps and served in Vietnam, demonstrating the same courage and dedication that had sustained his family's search for him. After his military service, Luis had become a firefighter, spending his career protecting others and saving lives. The irony was not lost on his family that while they had been searching for him, he had been dedicating his life to helping others in crisis. His choice of profession reflected a character shaped by service and sacrifice. Luis had also become a father and grandfather, building his own family while unaware of the relatives who had never stopped looking for him. His children and grandchildren had grown up knowing nothing about his California origins or the family that had been searching for him their entire lives. The initial meeting took place at the Oakland Police Department, providing a neutral and supportive environment for the reunion. Alida was the first family member to meet Luis, having been the driving force behind his discovery. The moment was emotional for both of them, representing the culmination of years of research and a lifetime of family stories. Alida later described the meeting as surreal and overwhelming. She had grown up hearing stories about her missing uncle, but meeting the actual person was almost impossible to process. Luis was no longer the 6-year-old boy from the family photographs, but a 79-year-old man with his own life experiences and memories. Luis's reaction to meeting his family was equally emotional. He had spent his entire life wondering about his early childhood memories and the circumstances of his adoption. The meeting provided answers to questions he had carried for decades, while also creating new questions about his identity and family history. The reunion also included Luis's sister, who had been just a child when he disappeared. She was now in her 80s, having lived most of her life without her brother. The meeting between the siblings was particularly poignant, as they had both aged considerably since their last time together in 1951. Most significantly, Luis was reunited with his brother Roger, who had been the last person to see him before his disappearance. Roger was now 83 years old and had carried the weight of being the only witness to his brother's abduction for 73 years. The reunion between the brothers was deeply emotional, representing the healing of a trauma that had affected Roger throughout his life. Alida described watching the brothers embrace for the first time in more than 7 decades. They held each other for a long time, both crying as they processed the reality of being reunited after such an extended separation. The moment represented not just a family reunion but the resolution of one of the most enduring mysteries in missing persons cases. The brothers sat together and talked about their memories of that day in 1951. Roger was able to share details about what happened in the park, while Luis began to recall fragments of memories from his early childhood. The conversation helped both men process the trauma of their separation and begin to understand what had happened to their family. Luis revealed that he had some memories of his kidnapping and the journey to the East Coast, though the details were fragmented and unclear. He remembered being confused and scared, but the adults in his life had not answered his questions about what was happening to him. Over time, these memories had become buried as he adapted to his new life. The man's adoptive parents had provided him with a loving home and good opportunities, but they had never explained the circumstances of his adoption or acknowledged his original identity. They had raised him as their own son, giving him their name and creating a new life for him on the East Coast. The question of whether Luis's adoptive parents knew about his true identity remained unanswered. Both adoptive parents had passed away years earlier, taking their knowledge of the circumstances to their graves. The FBI investigation continued to examine this aspect of the case, though finding definitive answers was unlikely after so many years. Luis's discovery also raised questions about the woman who had taken him from the park in 1951. The FBI investigation suggested that she may have been connected to the adoptive family, possibly facilitating an illegal adoption. However, with most of the potential witnesses and suspects deceased, the full truth about the kidnapping might never be known. The emotional impact of the reunion extended beyond the immediate family members. Luis's children and grandchildren learned that their father and grandfather had a completely different identity and family history than they had believed. This revelation required significant adjustment for everyone involved. Similarly, the Albino family members had to process the reality that their missing uncle had been living a full life just across the country. They had to reconcile their memories and stories of the missing 6-year-old with the reality of the elderly man who had been found. The reunion generated significant media attention, with news outlets around the world covering the story of the longest resolved missing persons case in American history. The case became a symbol of hope for other families dealing with missing loved ones, demonstrating that even the oldest cases could potentially be solved. Luis's story also highlighted the advances in DNA technology and genealogy that have revolutionized cold case investigations. The case would not have been solved without the combination of modern genetic testing and persistent family advocacy, showing how technology and human determination can work together to achieve seemingly impossible results. The bittersweet nature of the reunion was underscored by the fact that Luis's mother, Antonia, had died in 2005 without ever knowing what happened to her son. She had spent 54 years searching for him, carrying his photograph and maintaining hope until the day she died. The family's joy at finding Luis was tempered by the sadness that Antonia had not lived to see her son again. The reunion also took place against the backdrop of Roger's declining health. At 83, Roger was dealing with cancer and other health issues that limited his time with his rediscovered brother. The family treasured the opportunity for the brothers to reconnect, knowing that their time together might be limited. In July of 2024, Luis returned to California for another visit with his family. This second reunion was less formal than the first, allowing for more natural interaction and conversation. The family was able to share more stories about Luis's mother and siblings, helping him understand the family he had been taken from. The July visit also provided an opportunity for Luis to see his childhood neighborhood and visit the park where he had been abducted. The experience was emotional for Luis, as he was able to connect his fragmented memories with the actual locations where events had occurred. Tragically, the July visit was the last time Luis would see his brother Roger. Roger passed away in August of 2024, just 1 month after being reunited with his long-lost brother. The family was grateful that Roger had lived to see Luis again, but his death added another layer of complexity to the reunion. Roger's death meant that Luis had to process not only the discovery of his true identity, but also the immediate loss of the brother who had been searching for him. The timing was particularly difficult, as Luis had just begun to reconnect with his family when death separated him from Roger once again. The family's experience illustrated the complex emotions involved in resolving long-term missing persons cases. While the discovery of Luis alive was cause for celebration, it also brought grief for the lost years and the family members who had died without knowing his fate. Luis's gratitude for being found was evident in his interactions with Alida and the rest of his family. He thanked Alida repeatedly for her persistence in pursuing the DNA match and for never giving up on finding him. He expressed amazement at the dedication his family had shown in maintaining his memory and continuing to search for him. The case also demonstrated the importance of modern technology in solving cold cases. Without DNA testing and genealogy websites, Luis would likely never have been identified. The combination of genetic science and family determination had achieved what decades of traditional investigation could not accomplish. For law enforcement agencies, the case represented a significant success in cold case investigations. The collaboration between local, state, and federal agencies, combined with advanced DNA technology, had solved a case that had baffled investigators for more than 7 decades. The resolution of Luis's case provided hope for other families dealing with missing loved ones. The case demonstrated that even the oldest cold cases could potentially be solved with new technology and persistent investigation. It also showed that missing persons could be found alive even after many decades, challenging assumptions about long-term disappearances. While the Albino family's story represents the miraculous resolution that every family of missing persons hopes for, thousands of other families continue their searches without such closure. The reality is that Luis Armando Albino's case is an exception rather than the rule, and most missing persons cases remain unsolved despite the best efforts of families and law enforcement. The statistics surrounding missing persons cases paint a sobering picture of the challenges faced by families and investigators. In Tennessee alone, over 400 children go missing every month, according to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. While most of these cases are resolved quickly, some develop into long-term mysteries that haunt families for years or decades. The case of Sebastian Rogers illustrates the ongoing nature of many missing persons investigations. Sebastian was 15 years old when he disappeared from his home in Hendersonville, Tennessee, on February 26, 2024. The teenager was reportedly autistic and had left home without his necessary medication, creating immediate concerns for his safety and well-being. Sebastian's disappearance prompted an immediate and extensive search effort. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation issued an Amber Alert, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to his safe return. Despite these efforts and significant media attention, Sebastian has not been found, and there have been no confirmed sightings of him since his disappearance. The circumstances of Sebastian's disappearance are particularly puzzling. His stepfather, Chris Proudfoot, was on a business trip in Memphis when Sebastian went missing. His mother, Katie Proudfoot, discovered his empty bed when she went to wake him for school. The family has cooperated fully with the investigation, but no evidence has been found to explain what happened to Sebastian. The search for Sebastian has involved multiple agencies and extensive resources. Search teams have combed through forests, fields, and waterways around his home, Helicopters have conducted aerial searches, and search dogs have been deployed to track any scent. Despite these efforts, no trace of Sebastian has been found. The impact of Sebastian's disappearance on his family has been devastating. His parents have faced threatening messages and have had to move from their home due to safety concerns. The emotional toll of having a missing child, combined with public scrutiny and criticism, has created an almost unbearable situation for the family. The case has also generated significant media attention, with television programs and podcasts covering the story extensively. However, despite the publicity and numerous tips from the public, no credible leads have emerged that would help locate Sebastian or explain what happened to him. Sebastian's case represents the ongoing challenge of missing persons investigations. Despite modern technology, extensive resources, and significant public attention, some people simply vanish without a trace. The lack of evidence or witnesses can make it impossible to determine what happened, leaving families in a state of perpetual uncertainty. The Walker family's continuing search for Dave Nicole Walker represents another example of the long-term impact of missing persons cases. Davin has been missing since February of 2020, and her family continues to hope for her safe return while dealing with the daily reality of not knowing her fate. Larry and Ramona Walker have had to learn to live with uncertainty while maintaining hope for their daughter's return. They continue to speak with law enforcement, follow up on tips, and search for any information that might lead to finding Devon. The emotional toll of this ongoing search affects every aspect of their lives. The Walker family's experience illustrates the unique challenges faced by families of missing adults. Unlike missing children cases, which generate immediate public attention and extensive resources, missing adults cases often receive less priority and fewer resources. This disparity can create additional stress for families who are already dealing with the trauma of having a missing loved one. The case of Tamara Keepness from Regina, Saskatchewan, demonstrates how missing persons cases can remain unsolved for decades. Tamara was 5 years old when she disappeared from her home in July of 2004. Despite receiving over 2,000 tips and extensive investigation, Tamara has never been found. The impact of Tamara's disappearance on her family has been profound and long-lasting. Her mother, Lorena, died in 2023 without ever knowing what happened to her daughter. The family was torn apart by the disappearance, with Tamara's siblings being removed from the home by Child Protection Services and placed in foster care. The case generated significant media attention and public interest, but despite the extensive investigation and numerous tips, no credible evidence has been found to explain what happened to Tamara. The case remains open, but after nearly 20 years, the likelihood of finding answers continues to diminish. The emotional impact of these unresolved cases extends beyond the immediate families. Extended relatives, friends, and community members all experience secondary trauma from prolonged missing persons cases. The uncertainty affects everyone who cared about the missing person, creating ripple effects throughout entire communities. Support systems for families of missing persons have evolved to address these long-term challenges. Organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children provide resources and assistance to families dealing with missing loved ones. These organizations offer emotional support, investigative assistance, and advocacy for policy changes to improve missing persons investigations. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has developed programs specifically designed to address long-term missing persons cases. The agency works with families to maintain active investigations and provides resources for generating new leads. Age progression photographs are created for long-term missing persons cases, helping to keep the cases in the public eye. The Nashville Police Department's creation of a dedicated missing persons website in 2024 represents another effort to address the challenges of unsolved cases. The website includes photographs, case information, and age-progressed images when available. The goal is to generate new leads by making information more accessible to the public. Despite these efforts, the reality is that many missing persons cases remain unsolved. The passage of time creates additional challenges for investigations. As witnesses die or relocate, evidence deteriorates, and memories fade. The longer a case remains unsolved, the more difficult it becomes to find answers. The psychological impact on families of missing persons is complex and long-lasting. Unlike families who experience the death of a loved one, families of missing persons cannot grieve in traditional ways. They exist in a state of perpetual uncertainty, unable to move forward but also unable to go back. This ambiguous loss creates unique challenges for family members who must learn to live with uncertainty while maintaining hope. The daily routine includes the constant awareness that their loved one might return at any moment, creating an emotional burden that affects every aspect of their lives. The financial impact of missing persons cases can also be significant. Families often spend their life savings on private investigators, search efforts, and other expenses related to finding their missing loved one. The financial stress adds another layer of difficulty to an already overwhelming situation. The cases of missing persons also highlight the importance of community support and involvement. Search efforts often rely on volunteers from the community who donate their time and resources to help find missing individuals. The support of friends, neighbors, and strangers can be crucial for families dealing with the trauma of having a missing loved one. The role of media coverage in missing persons cases is complex and can be both helpful and harmful. Extensive media attention can generate tips and leads that might not otherwise surface, but it can also create additional stress for families who are already dealing with trauma. The quality and tone of media coverage can significantly impact both the investigation and the family's experience. Social media has created new opportunities for sharing information about missing persons, but it has also created new challenges. False information can spread rapidly online, creating confusion and potentially hindering investigations. Families must navigate the benefits and risks of using social media to publicize their loved one's disappearance. The advancement of technology continues to offer new hope for resolving missing persons cases. DNA testing, facial recognition software, and other technological tools are constantly improving, creating new possibilities for identifying missing individuals and solving cold cases. However, technology alone cannot solve the fundamental challenges of missing persons investigations. The human element remains crucial, requiring persistent advocacy from families, dedicated investigation by law enforcement, and community support for search efforts. The stories of families who continue searching for missing loved ones demonstrate the profound impact of unresolved cases on individuals and communities. These families represent thousands of others who live with the daily reality of not knowing what happened to their loved ones, while maintaining hope for answers that may never come. For every success story like Luis Armando Albino's reunion with his family, there are countless other families who continue their searches without resolution. These ongoing cases remind us that behind every missing person statistic is a family dealing with unimaginable loss and uncertainty. The dedication of these families to continue searching, despite the odds and the passage of time, represents the deepest aspects of human love and determination. Their stories serve as a reminder that every missing person matters, and that the search for answers must continue, regardless of how much time has passed. The resolution of Luis Armando Albino's case after 73 years offers profound lessons about the power of persistence, the importance of hope, and the remarkable advances in technology that have transformed missing persons investigations. His story demonstrates that even the most challenging cases can be solved when family determination meets modern investigative tools. The key factors that led to solving Luis's case provide a blueprint for other families dealing with missing loved ones. First and foremost was the unwavering dedication of his family, particularly his mother Antonia, who never stopped believing that her son was alive. Her daily visits to the police station, her careful preservation of newspaper articles, and her constant sharing of Luis's story kept the case alive in the family's collective memory. Alida Alekin's decision to pursue genetic genealogy represented a crucial turning point in the investigation. Her willingness to take a DNA test and her persistence in following up on the results demonstrate how family members can actively contribute to solving cold cases. Without her initiative, Luis might never have been identified, despite being alive and well, just across the country. The case also highlights the importance of maintaining accurate records and preserving evidence over time. The Oakland Police Department's decision to keep Luis's case open for more than 7 decades allowed for new evidence to be submitted and investigated. The digitization of historical newspaper archives provided crucial documentation that supported the family's research efforts. The collaboration between different levels of law enforcement was essential to the case's resolution. The Oakland Police Department, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and various support agencies worked together to verify the DNA evidence and locate Luis. This cooperation demonstrates the importance of interagency coordination in missing persons investigations. The advances in DNA technology that made Luis's identification possible represent a revolution in forensic science. Commercial genealogy testing has created databases containing millions of genetic profiles, providing unprecedented opportunities for identifying missing persons and solving cold cases. The technology that started as a tool for exploring family history has become a powerful instrument for law enforcement. The case provides hope for other families dealing with missing loved ones, demonstrating that resolution is possible even after many decades. However, it also illustrates the unique circumstances that made Luis's case solvable. He was alive and well, living under his own name, and had submitted DNA through a relative's genealogy testing. These factors created the opportunity for identification that may not exist in other cases. The emotional impact of Luis's reunion with his family demonstrates both the joy and complexity of resolving long-term missing persons cases. While the family celebrated finding their missing relative, they also had to process the grief of lost years and the family members who died without knowing his fate. The reunion brought closure to some questions while creating new ones about the circumstances of his disappearance. The case raises important questions about the ethics of adoption and the rights of biological families. Luis was raised by adoptive parents who provided him with a loving home and good opportunities, but they may have known about his true identity without revealing it. The tension between protecting children and preserving family connections continues to be a challenge in missing persons cases involving minors. The media attention surrounding Luis's case has brought awareness to the broader issue of missing persons and the families who search for them. The story has inspired other families to pursue genetic genealogy and has encouraged law enforcement agencies to invest more resources in cold case investigations. The publicity has also highlighted the need for better support systems for families dealing with missing loved ones. The success of Luis's case has implications for how missing persons investigations are conducted in the future. The combination of traditional investigative techniques with modern technology has proven to be particularly effective. Law enforcement agencies are increasingly recognizing the value of genetic genealogy and are developing protocols for incorporating these tools into their investigations. The case also demonstrates the importance of community involvement in missing persons cases. The preservation of historical records, the digitization of archives, and the public's willingness to participate in genetic genealogy databases all contributed to the resolution of Luis's case. These community resources are essential for solving cold cases and supporting families of missing persons. The timing of Luis's reunion with his family, particularly his final meeting with his brother Roger before Roger's death, underscores the importance of pursuing missing persons cases actively rather than passively waiting for resolution. The family's decision to pursue the DNA match in 2024 allowed the brothers to reconnect before it was too late. The case provides valuable lessons for other families dealing with missing loved ones. A leader's advice to never give up reflects the determination that made Luis's discovery possible. Her willingness to pursue genetic genealogy, research historical records, and work with law enforcement demonstrates the active role that families can play in solving missing persons cases. The resolution of Luis's case also highlights the importance of maintaining hope while preparing for different outcomes. The Albino family maintained hope for Luis's safe return while also accepting the possibility that he might not be found alive. This balance between hope and realism allowed them to pursue leads actively while protecting their emotional well-being. The case demonstrates that missing persons investigations are not just about finding individuals, but about healing families and communities. Luis's reunion with his family provided closure not just for the immediate relatives, but for the entire community that had been affected by his disappearance. The resolution of the case brought peace to people who had wondered about Luis's fate for decades. The story of Luis Armando Albino represents more than just a successful missing persons case. It symbolizes the power of love, persistence, and hope to overcome seemingly impossible odds. His family's 73-year search demonstrates that some bonds cannot be broken by time, distance, or circumstances. The case also serves as a reminder that behind every missing person statistic is a human story of love, loss, and hope. Luis's story represents thousands of other families who continue their searches without resolution, maintaining hope in the face of uncertainty and demonstrating the profound depths of human love and determination. The advances in technology that made Luis's identification possible offer hope for resolving other cold cases, but they also require active participation from families and communities. The success of genetic genealogy depends on people submitting DNA samples and maintaining accurate family trees. The digitization of historical records requires investment from libraries and archives. The resolution of missing persons cases remains a community effort that requires participation from multiple stakeholders. The case of Luis Armando Albino will likely be remembered as a watershed moment in missing persons investigations, demonstrating the potential for combining traditional investigative techniques with modern technology to solve even the oldest cold cases. His story provides hope for other families while also highlighting the complex challenges involved in missing persons investigations. The resolution of Luis's case after 73 years proves that it is never too late to find answers, and that the search for missing loved ones should never be abandoned. His family's persistence and the advances in technology that made his identification possible have created a legacy of hope that will inspire other families for generations to come. The message of Luis's story is clear. Families should never give up hope, law enforcement should never close cases permanently, and communities should continue to support efforts to find missing persons. The combination of human determination and technological advancement has the power to solve even the most challenging cases and bring families together after decades of separation. For the thousands of families who continue searching for missing loved ones, Luis Armando Albino's story represents proof that miracles can happen, that love endures across time and distance, and that the search for truth and justice should never be abandoned. His reunion with his family after 73 years stands as a testament to the power of hope and the importance of never giving up on finding the answers that families deserve. The incredible journey of Luis Armando Albino and his family's 73-year search proves that some mysteries can be solved, some families can be reunited, and hope should never be abandoned. If you found this case as remarkable as we did, make sure to subscribe to Criminal Mind Cortex for more extraordinary true crime investigations that showcase the resilience of the human spirit and the power of never giving up. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest deep research into the most compelling cases that remind us why every missing person matters and why every family deserves answers. Your support helps us continue bringing these important stories to light and potentially helping other families find the closure they seek.